Starbucks is spending $100 million to move 2,000 corporate jobs out of Seattle and down to Nashville. Looking at this chart comparing median incomes, you see the immediate appeal for the company. Seattle sits high, up in the $120,000 to $30,000 range. But drop down to Nashville, and that band falls to between $70,000 and $80,000. Factor in lower corporate taxes and getting physically closer to their suppliers, and standard corporate accounting scores this as a massive win. It looks like a clear path to cheaper labor and more efficient operations. But there is a fatal flaw in the plan. The workers aren't going. The company is offering stock grants and $2,000 travel reimbursements, but employees are choosing to quit rather than uproot their families and leave their communities behind. Corporate spreadsheets are perfectly tuned to measure geographic advantages. They calculate differences in state tax codes and real estate effortlessly. What they completely miss is the massive, unrecorded cost of human disruption when a workforce refuses to be shuffled across a map. To understand why these employees stay put, we have to look at the shadow ledger. These are the invisible economic realities of daily life that top-down planning ignores, starting directly with the local housing market. On paper, the move looks like a great deal for an employee. A median home in Nashville costs roughly 40% less than one in Seattle. But this breakdown shows the trap. A worker who bought a $600,000 Seattle home years ago likely locked in a mortgage rate around 3%. If they move to Nashville and buy a cheaper $525,000 house, they have to buy into today's market at roughly 6.5%. That is more than double the interest rate. When you run those numbers through to the final monthly payment, the math flips entirely. The Seattle home costs about $2,500 a month. The cheaper Nashville home costs over $3,300. That relocating worker is now paying nearly $800 extra every single month. These employees are not stubbornly clinging to their hometowns. Mathematically, they are locked into a system where accepting a relocation means taking a pay cut, trading down to a smaller house, and paying a steep premium to do it. Zoom out from the individual, and you see states actively cannibalizing each other to win these corporate headquarters. State governments are aggressively slashing income and corporate taxes to lure business across their borders, eroding their own treasuries to secure a headline. This manufactured migration creates deep physical strains on the grid. In origin cities like Seattle, regional hydropower has been severely crippled by consecutive years of drought, creating massive power shortfalls that utilities are scrambling to cover. Meanwhile, in destination cities, the opposite scramble is happening. The Tennessee Valley Authority is rushing to build over 6,000 megawatts of new generation, the largest capital program in its history, just to power this influx of corporate relocations and data centers. But this creates a massive systemic bug. Regions are racing to build high-capacity transmission lines and heavy substations for a projected surge in demand. Yet because the human workforce refuses to actually relocate, that projected load never materializes. It's phantom demand. Building for demand that doesn't exist leads to stranded assets. We end up with billions of dollars wasted on physical infrastructure, wired to serve empty office parks and a workforce that stayed home. All of this waste funnels into one overarching category: defensive capital. This is the massive budget organizations are forced to burn through, simply reacting to the chaos of a fragmented system. As this graphic shows, we have to separate productive spending from reactive spending. Productive benefits, like healthcare, paid leave, and retirement, proactively build long-term stability. Defensive capital is strictly reactive. It is the overtime pay for understaffed shifts, massive severance packages, and the high fees paid to temp agencies to plug sudden holes. You see this bleed across every sector. It looks like paying up to 3 times an annual salary to replace a bad hire. It looks like energy projects sitting in 3 to 7 year interconnection queues. And it looks like over $150 billion in data center projects currently stalled by local community opposition. When a corporation boasts about saving $100 million by moving across the country, that savings is a mirage. It is instantly erased by the defensive capital they will have to spend to survive the resulting operational bleed. We have reached a point where state-level corporate competition no longer drives growth. It acts as an active mechanism of economic degeneration, breaking down the very communities and grids it relies on. The structural patch to this requires entering what we call the coordination age. Instead of states and cities locked in a race to zero on tax rates, regions need to share intelligence on housing stability, energy access, and workforce retention. We are already seeing early moves in this direction with the Ignition cohort. This is an emerging alignment of utility operators, municipalities, and tech companies trying to stabilize their local markets through active partnership rather than venue shopping for the cheapest zip code. You cannot force a deeply rooted workforce to pack up and chase a spreadsheet's phantom demand. True economic progress happens when a system recognizes the human reality on the ground and builds directly from where its people already stand.